What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to be teaching you about Angular 2. Angular is a great framework that sits on top of JavaScript. I use it every day at work. I personally believe it's better than React for many reasons, but I wanted to make this video as sort of like an introduction to Angular and a comparison against something like React, which is another framework. All right, let's get into it. So, henceforth in this video, when I'm referring to Angular, I'm talking about Angular 2.0 or later, not AngularJS. AngularJS was Google's first attempt at creating a framework, and while it's still supported to this day, it's just not as good as Angular 2.0 or greater. So when I talk about Angular in this video, it's going to be about Angular 2.0 and greater, not AngularJS, just in case there's any confusion. Now, why Angular? Why would a developer want to choose Angular as a framework? A couple of good reasons is Angular is a two-way data binding framework. Now, two-way data binding typically refers to the ability for you to have direct access to the DOM. So when you manipulate things on your framework, it'll instantly update it on the DOM tree. This is pretty good. In React, you usually have to set up a couple of boilerplates. You have to use some kind of like React hooks like set state to kind of update the state. And then you have to update the component tree because, you know, React has its one-way data binding templating. So that's one good reason why Angular is better than React in that sense. Of course, this is all opinionated. Angular has a lot of built-in functionality out of the box with its CLI. With React, it's known for being very bare bones and skeletal. You pick and choose what you want to include, whereas things like Angular will come out of the box with Angular Router, for instance. So that's another positive. And then Angular allows for HTML templating, and that can be really easy to work with if you're coming from HTML and CSS and are getting right into your first framework. Below, I showed a little photo right here of what HTML templating kind of looks like. There are two ways you can do this in Angular, but I'm going to show you right now just through the HTML file itself. As you can see, we have things like ngIf, competency. It's like a Boolean. Essentially, this would be like, if competency is true, we're going to show this div, which can be very helpful. I don't know if you guys know much about React, but React can be kind of a headache to get stuff like things, like hiding of div tags or fragments, etc., or just looping over new components can be kind of tedious. So yeah, those are some good reasons why Angular is better than maybe something like React for you. Now, some reasons why Angular might be bad. Angular is bloated with Webpack and other features that we might not need. Kind of going back to everything coming out of the box. If you don't need all of those things in your project, your bundle size, which is what happens when you say ng build, you build your application and you're getting ready to deploy it on production, can be very bloated with things that you're not even using. And so that can cause a lot of problems down the line if you're not using those items. And that might be a reason why you would want React, because your app might be smaller, or you might not need as many custom components, things like router, etc. So that's one bad reason for Angular. Another bad reason is that with two-way data binding, it means that we have direct access to the DOM. Now, Angular has a lot of good security components kind of out of the box that will prevent things like script injection and stuff. But the fact that you can still hatch into the direct DOM tree can cause problems. And if you're not aware of certain security vulnerabilities that Angular might have at the moment, that can cause issues down the line for you as well. And then the third reason why Angular might be kind of bad is there's a lot of boilerplate and files on a component level. So I think there are usually about 4 or 5 files to one component. You would have your TypeScript file, which is kind of like your JavaScript file. You have your HTML file, which holds your HTML templates. You have your service file, which would hold things like logic or HTTP requests. Then you have a spec file, which is for your unit testing. And it can get really bloated really quick. So if you're making a project and you're not very good at organization, or you just don't like having a lot of files, Angular will be very bad for that reason. So I've opened up an example project for Angular. If you're familiar with Angular, you might know some of this stuff. React kind of has the same stuff too, except, you know, with React, you have JSX, which we would be doing our, you know, our HTML tags in here, etc. But with Angular, you have your component file, you have your CSS file or Sass, less, etc., depending on which option you choose or what you use for work. A spec file, which holds all your tests, and then a module, which is typically for including either other modules, other apps, or other components, or if you use things like material, router, etc., you would add that into your imports as well. So I'm not going into too much detail today. I just wanted to show you a couple of cool things that Angular can do straight out of the box. And later on, I'm going to come out with a video on kind of your first project with Angular. So just to kind of give you a little bit of a starter, we're going to ngserve, which ngserve is the command we run when we want to serve up our application on localhost so we can view it. It's going to build. All right, cool. We've compiled successfully. And as you can see here on localhost 4200, we have hello world. Cool. Now, one cool thing about Angular is we have things like ngIf. So with ngIf, you can hide a component if something isn't true. So let's say is true. Let's camel case. And then in here, within our app component, we would say is true equals true. So that would be our Boolean, right? So as you can see, hello world is still showing. Now, if we set this to false, hello world's missing. That's one example of things that you know, Angular has straight out of the box for us that we don't really need to implement or provide boilerplate for. Another cool thing is if we do something like this, let's say title equals an array, and we're going to make it an array saying hello world, this is Angular. Now instead of doing this, we can do ng4, and we'll say for item of title, we can extrapolate the item and display it. Hello world, this is Angular. These are each technically a component. Pretty cool, right? Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this introduction to Angular. I was trying to figure out a good way to introduce it without delving too deep. And this is my first video, so please maybe add some suggestions in the comments below. Let me know what you guys think. I will post, in case anybody's wondering, I will post a comprehensive list of the plugins that I'm using for VS Code, because I'm sure there's always going to be people who are wondering. And stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.